All right, we're here with Mr. Quentin Mise. Quentin is our supplier at Nelson Ledges with Fasttrax, and he's not always there himself, but he does have one of his guys or crew there. Sometimes it changes, but they're at every round, and they're our supplier of tires. How are you doing today, Mr.
I'm doing
Mise?
good, Ryan. Good to see you, man.
Good, man. So, first, I think we'll just do I think just give a little background about, you know, when did you get into this business and, how did you get into this business of doing track tires?
Well, it goes back to the '80s. I was a kid on a dirt bike, and we were blue collar folks out of Baltimore, Maryland, and I grew up at Aquasco Raceway in Budds Creek, down where Travis Pastrana was growing up and all that back in those days, and I wanted to be a motorcycle racer and a race car driver professionally my whole life. As a child, I knew I wanted to do that. And I went from motocross to road racing, sport bike racing in '92. And then I rode for Yamaha as a contingency rider. I was never a factory pro or anything, but I had a contingency deal from '97 to '00. And then I did a year of Suzuki Cup. I did the GSXR 600, 750, and 1000s in the year 2001. And when that ended, I tried sports cars, and I had the talent to drive the cars. I broke the student track record in a Formula V at Summit, first weekend I ever drove one, but I didn't have the finances and the money to, keep car racing going. That's exorbitantly expensive. So I just didn't know what to do for a year or two, and I was literally in tears crying one night. I was so heartbroken about not being able to make a living at the track anymore. So I looked at who makes money at the track and who can pay their bills, and it's usually the track owner, the promoter, and the tire guy. Those are the three guys that do it full time, or ladies that do it full time. I didn't have the money to buy a racetrack. I didn't even have the money to rent a racetrack, but I was able to get the money together to buy some tires. So I set out to become the tire guy with the goal of continuing to make a living by always being at and living at the racetrack.
So
The,
this
the whole
originally you were selling car tires, track tires.
No, well, in Maryland, I had my phone number is 410 car tire. 410-227-8473 is 410 car tire. And when I set up to do tires at the motorcycle races, I needed a wholesale retail warehouse kind of a space, commercial space to put tires and tire machines. So I started selling car tires out of a little shop in Maryland and bought that phone number. I bought that phone number from the Baltimore Telephone Company.
Interesting. So what was the because you sell Pirelli, Bridgestone, Dunlop. Do you do Michelin too?
I do now, yeah.
Okay.
So when I started, Summit Point was my home track, and I had done a bunch of races with Bob Stanley and Fast Tracks at Nelson Ledges through the years. I earned their number one expert overall plate in '96 and '97. Held the track record for about 30 minutes in the year 2000 with Larry Denning. He bested me by more. So, I mean, I had been at Nelson Ledges, but that wasn't where I was starting to sell tires at first. I started in '04 at Summit Point.
Okay.
I called my friend Walt Schaefer at Michelin, and I called my friend Amy over at Bridgestone, over at Barbara's place at PTSC, and they didn't have a rep at Summit Point. So I thought I was going to be cute and kind of different and talk both companies into letting me rep for them without telling each other about each other.
Right.
And the contracts were not exclusive. So I was the first person to be smart enough or rude enough, depending how you look at it, to grab two companies and cross sell them at the same events. To my knowledge, I was the first guy in the country to ever do that. And
And that was
at
Bridgestone and
first,
Michelin.
Bridgestone and Michelin, yeah. At first, they didn't like it. But they were happy to just have a rep at that track that they didn't have.
Yeah.
And because of my reputation in the racing side of it, a lot of the racers that were still racing in 2004 remembered me from, all my shenanigans in the late 90s. So they knew who I was, they trusted me, and they accepted my recommendations and help and support. So I started helping these other experts win their races, and then the volumes started to increase. And by 2006, we were doing thousands of tires for those two brands. And the first 2 years they didn't like it, but by 2006 they didn't care anymore. They were just glad to have thousands of tires moving.
Right. So, do you does each specific brand have you like do training, and is it like a a yearly thing, or is it a new product thing, or is there no training at all, just a informative type thing, or do they just send you information and you kind of just decipher it and then do your own thing?
Most of the tire guy safety training, whatever that means in your head, whatever that looks like to you, that came to me from Walt Schaefer. Walt Schaefer was the guy that sat me down in 2004, and he said, "Look, Quentin, I know you're a good mechanic. You build all your own engines. You race your motorcycle. I get all that. But let me show you how to safely run a tire machine and how to handle wheels properly for other racers with other wheels you may not be familiar with." Carbon fiber was just starting to come out. It was exclusively and extremely expensive back then, but we needed to know how to work on it because we had some prototype carbon wheels coming out. And Walt Schaefer taught me all the safety aspects of that. The Michelin rep and the Bridgestone reps taught me the product knowledge. And still to this day, it goes that way.
Yeah. So do you do that like a yearly basis, or just when new product comes out, and or
Mostly after being in the business for 20 years, mostly now they just kind of give it to me when a new product comes out.
gotcha? But like initially, they like bring you in and like have like, I don't know, like some type of class for a couple different people and kind of go over stuff, or is it like a one-on-one thing, or
The best way for that information to get translated, and it's what I do with my dealers now, because I don't know if you know this, but I'm a wholesale distributor now, and I have dealers buying different brands from me in different places.
okay,
Some of the other tire guys that you guys may travel across and see in other areas of the country may be customers of mine. So what I do for them is I do what you're talking about, but I do it one on one. I'll travel to a race. I'll spend the money, the airfare or the gas to get there. It's a good investment on my part to make sure that my dealer knows what he's doing. So I don't ask them to pay for it because they're new dealers and they're up and working in the business and they're trying to make a buck. So what I do is I go to them and I work for them for free for a weekend or two, and I train them. My most recent dealer is a good friend of mine. He's got a lot of racing experience. He's won a lot of races in the Mid Atlantic. And what I did with him was I invited him to one of my events, and I said, "Hey, you don't live far. Why don't you just come hang out with me at my event?" And we one on one, and we train that way. That's that's how we do it. We like to do it one on one because we think we get more out of it that way.
gotcha.
If we rent a hotel room and put 20 guys in there and hand them a notepad and try to do it like a seminar, they're not touching a machine
Yeah.
in the moment,
Yeah.
and they forget everything.
So like the mechanical aspect, I get. I'm talking more because yeah, I mean that's important. Like I'm not good at reading something and trying to translate. You show me once, I can do it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Hands-on's way better for that stuff. But as far as the product knowledge and stuff, how are you relaying that to your other people, or is that something that like, that information? I don't know. I'm just taking a stab at something like you're the rep, but does the tire information, the specs and compound and just all the technical data, does that just come from Pirelli or Michelin and they get added to an email and they get that information, or is that stuff you go over to kind of inform them, why certain things do certain things and what to talk to the customer about? And
It's a little different by manufacturer, to be totally honest with you. One of the brands, and I don't want to name names because I work them all, and I don't want one to think I love them any more or less than another. But one of the brands has the contract for National Pro Racing, and they set up a big rig at the pro rounds, and then they bring guys like me in to work their crews for them as a subcontractor.
Yeah.
And all the guys in that crew, if you look at that crew, as large as it is, none of them are entry level. They're all guys at my level or above in the industry that either own tire companies or work as distributors or vendors in the industry. Every single person on that pro crew is a higher level individual in the industry. They don't allow entry level people to work those crews. So with that one brand we're talking about, I get all my information directly from corporate, really on site to do the pro race. And I get some information from their engineers, and I get some information from actually the team mechanics. The team technicians will give me feedback and teach me things about that product and how I can use it when I'm selling at a club race.
Gotcha.
So that's that brand. That's kind of how they do it because they've got the big show and the big pro thing and all that. There's another very popular brand in club racing that's extremely popular. It's a really good sprint racing product. And what they do is they just take me, I just see them 2 or 3 times a year where I work side by side with them. And they kind of give me all the updates on, what's going on at World Superbike and how that relates down to club racing.
Gotcha.
And then one of the brands, I've kind of taken that over in a way, just because I'm their biggest distributor in the country. I have the most dealers in that brand. I have the most volume in that brand. That brand picked up a big national track day outfit contract this year that went national. It was like 30 some dates just for that one contract. And of course I had to service all that. So, for that one brand, I have become, at least on the East Coast, their trainer, and I'm the one that's passing that information down. There's a rep that works out of Indianapolis I love dearly. He's my good friend. 2 guys out there that I'm really close to, but one I'm thinking of comes to the track, and he gives me a lot of technical data, but I'm the one that's kind of relaying it out.
Gotcha.
So the longer I'm in the business, kind of the more of that I become responsible for. My dealers are all getting that from me.
Yep. So I mean, there's quite a few questions. What is the? Let's ask you this first. What's like one of the main questions you get asked, especially from guys not on slicks?
Right.
Street tire guys, whatever. What's the main question you get asked at the track, or your guys get asked? It's just a common question, every weekend you're going to hear the same thing.
Okay, so I'm really glad you brought that up. It's important because the racing community and the track day community, they're a little bit different goals. One, you're running against the clock. One, you're running to have a good time and learn to handle your motorcycle. So, Fasttrax being a track day club, we do see a lot of new street riders come in and participate, and we're so thankful for that. That is the lifeblood of the business. We need those newer track riders. One of the guys that works with me has been riding a motorcycle for 30 years since he was a little baby, since a little kid on dirt bikes. But it was his first time on track here about a month or 2 ago. So
the guy with the beard, right?
Yeah, Dale. Yeah. Super proud of that. Super thankful that he finally got on track and gave that a shot. And he loved it. He loved it. So, in the Fasttrax community and in other track day clubs, every single weekend I get the question, how do I know when to go to slicks? How do I know when I need tire warmers? How much air pressure do I put in my tires for track use? Very common. Let's take the first one. If you're on street tires and they're legal to be on a public road, and you can tell that by looking on the side of the tire, it'll say DOT and it'll have a DOT number. Just about anything in that category, regardless of who made it. And there's some variations on this. Somebody could watch this video and pick one product and slam me on the internet and say, oh, he's wrong, you don't know what he's doing. But just about everything in that category is going to run 34, 35, 36 pounds of air in the front tire.
I was going to ask this question specifically because you know, a lot of times we have the novice guys and they approach us and it's that question. It's like, hey, what pressure I run? And like the amount of street tires is insane. And that
Yeah,
was going to be one of my main questions to you is like, is there a general
yeah.
pressure that you could recommend that would, you know, for the most part cover most brands, especially like in a super sport tire or a even not really a sport touring, but maybe even that. And you were just going into that. Sorry I cut you off, but like literally that was one of my really big main questions because it'd be nice to have that out there in the ether for people to, you know, they can go and find that information specific to that tire, but it may not be a track temperature for that specific tire if it's a sport touring tire or something. But
So
we get asked that, and maybe you're not around, and something that we could say, hey, start here, you know? So,
so the place to start with that is for your customers and for you guys to be able to understand what classification of tire do they have. Okay, and it's really simple. This is super simple. Nobody thinks of this, but I'm going to give it to you. This is the industry secret. Okay, if they can buy what they're riding on the internet or from a motorcycle shop, it's a street tire.
right.
Period. They cannot buy real racing tires
Except through people like you.
except through race trackside distributors.
Yep.
And we do that for the safety of the general public, and we do that for the reputation of the tire company. You know, if somebody misuses a racing slick in the wrong way on a public road, it can be an embarrassment for the tire company and it can be an injury for the rider. So,
Well, you can buy online, but they're only through dealers that are specialized in that, right?
correct.
You
Like
have to
if
have
you go to
the
my site, you can buy on
right.
MizeMobile.com, you can buy the racing slick. That's true. But you're not going to get it from the
Yeah,
mainstream.
Revzilla or something like that. Yep.
Yeah, those types of companies, and I love those guys. I mean, they serve an important part in the industry. There's a purpose for
Yeah.
those guys to do what they do, but in order to sell race tires, you have to be at the racetrack, and if you're not there, they won't let you do it. So for your riders to say, hey, I bought this tire at Johnny K's or State 8, or I bought it at MPH from Doug. You know, if they're buying a treaded tire that has tread on it and has a DOT number on it, whether it's a performance tire or a mileage tire, a touring tire, we almost always recommend 34 to 35 in the front and 28 in the rear.
And that's cold.
And that's a cold setting,
Yep.
yeah. And lowering that rear to 28, what that does is it gets the back tire to spread out, make a much larger patch, but it's enough air to not let the tire overheat. Okay.
Got you.
Most guys on a street bike are not going to go out at those pressures and ever overheat or grease up a DOT
No,
street
no.
tire. You know, there's fast enough riders that can do it, but they already know what they're doing. It's not going to be an issue. So for your
Right.
new guys, that's what we do. Um, and then the next common question we get is, do I need warmers? Well, warmers are not a good idea on those DOT labeled street tires in hot weather because it can take them to the upper end. I'm gonna put my hand in the camera here. It can take them to the upper end of their temperature range sooner than you want to. Okay. It's not usually a big deal if you're 20 minutes on, 40 minutes off at most track days. You know, whatever the track day company is, they all pretty much follow a 15 to 20-minute format. So you're either on 15 off 45 or you're on 20 off 40. Well, you don't have enough time to grease a DOT tire in that short of period of time unless you start with warmers and go out with them already hot. If you heat your DOTs and you're fast enough to grind on them hard enough and you don't know what you're doing with your pressures, it's possible to grease a DOT. So we don't recommend warmers for them. We tell those guys just ride, have a good time, don't worry about it. Warmers are not required. This is a big, I'm going to bust a wives' tale here, a big myth. Warmers are, despite public opinion, not required for DOT race tires of a race compound
Right.
or slicks. Okay. What they do is they enable you to go right off the bat so you don't lose 2 laps waiting for the tires to warm up.
That
Okay.
and you can more accurately adjust pressure, correct? right?
Correct. If you adjust pressure off the warmers when they're hot, they'll be more stable when you go out for your session. That's absolutely true. I raced back in the day for years without warmers, and you know the rubber compounds weren't that different. They were a little different. The carcasses were a lot different, but not the rubber. And we would just give it a lap, warm them up, and then go and take it easy in the first lap of the race, and then trust them around lap 2. Well, if you do that all day long, you got to look at how many laps the average newer rider is going to get in a session. Let's say they get 8 laps. By the time the session starts and it flags in, they start, and then it flags off and they cool down. They're going to get 8 good laps.
Right.
Well, if it takes 2 to trust your tires, you just wasted 25% of all your available track time.
Right.
So that's what warmers are for. Warmers let you go right off the gate.
Now, because you were talking about, not being able to buy slicks, obviously, from just a normal distributor. It has to be from somebody that has, it's authorized and has that ability to do that. Now, race DOTs, is that something that only you offer, or is that something that can be bought elsewhere as well?
So it depends on the brand and how they market it. A real race DOT, a really real one, and that's complicated to answer. For political reasons, I don't want to do it here, but a really real race tire that's made with DOT tread in it can be DOT legal, and they're generally a little bit of a firmer carcass, most of them. Even in the brands that are known to be soft and mushy, even their product, if it's a DOT race tire, is a little firmer than their slicks.
Okay.
And what happens there is you can only buy it from a race distributor.
Okay.
They will sell a hybrid tire, a super sport tire, a track day tire. I've had customers ask me, is this a 50% tire, a 70%? 70% what? 70% track, 30% street, 30%
It's kind of marketing,
track.
Right? It's just marketing.
It's all marketing hoopla. Okay. Don't focus on any of that. The classifications of tires are street tire, DOT legal race tire, then slicks, then reins. Everything we sell from any brand, I can break it into those classifications. If it's truly a DOT race tire, warmers will help it. We recommend their use. And then you set the pressures. Usually for those, you're going to go around 36 in the front and drop those rears down to about 25 pounds, 24 in some cases. There are no low pressure rear DOTs that I'm aware of now. That may change in the future, but at the moment, any of your 19 and 20 pound rear tires are all going to be full on race slicks. So,
gotcha. Okay, so I know you probably don't want to get into, your thoughts on better or worse, brands or whatever, but I kind of wanted to ask the question of like, and if you don't want to answer it, that's fine. At least from my experience, kind of, when I first got into run slicks, I was running Pirellis. That was what everybody was kind of running. I ran them. They worked well with my application at first. When I changed to a different bike, where I had, it was just the characteristic of the bike. I'd wear which I spoke with you about. I'd kind of wear that tire on the, that kind of on the throttle band exiting the corner, about an inch up from the edge. And, you pointed me in a really good direction to the Bridgestones, the 3XS, the dual compound, and it completely cured that. I get more life out of the tire. I can't say if the grip is more or less. I don't think I have the capability to outride the tires like, Moto America guy or whatever and say, yeah, it can really come down to a bit like this is better than that. But, I've ran my best times on the Bridgestone. That doesn't mean the Pirelli's worse. I got just faster in general. But do you see any advantages from one tire to the next? Not so much because it's a better tire, but better for the application. Do you know what I mean? So, like, for me, for my application, my specific bike, the Bridgestones worked absolutely awesome for that particular application for what I needed. But my question is like, so the Pirellis are super, super soft carcass. Is there advantage to those as far as, and I guess, not so much, well, I guess it could be application, but like, compared to a Dunlop or a Bridgestone, it's a little stiffer, is one better on the upright braking phase versus a mid corner because of the carcass design?
So let me answer that question by backing up a step. Okay, you're naming specific brands and specific experiences that you've had, and I'm thankful to have the honor and the privilege of being able to help you do that, and that worked for you that day at that track in that weather condition, in that moment at that time.
Not
but
so much, might not be for everybody, right?
Right. I want to back up a step from your personal and specific experience to something I've seen more generally in the industry. The fact of the matter is I can take any of the 4 major brands, okay, without even naming who they are, whoever you think the 4 major brands are. I can take any of those 4 brands and take any new rider, and get them the experience they're looking for. Okay, whether they've been riding a while and they want to try slicks and see if they can go faster, or I just want to learn this racetrack without worrying about my tires. Those are 2 very different things for newer riders. Any of the 4 brands have tires that are perfect for that. So I can go into one club that's sponsored by a certain tire brand and use that brand, and everything's fine. I can go to a different club that's sponsored by a whole different brand and use their version of that tire, their version of what is supposed to serve that need. So the message I want to send your new riders, if they're coming to this forum and they're coming to look at this interview, what they need to know is not necessarily what the racers think the best tire is or this experience or that. What they need to know is that it doesn't matter what brand they pick. What matters is getting the correct tire for the job.
Got you.
So the correct Yokoshima is better than the wrong Shinkamomo, okay?
Yeah. As
And
far as compound, pressure, all that, right?
The correct Shinkamomo is going to outperform the wrong Yokohinko, right? So that's what they need to understand. And regardless of brand, all these tire companies make entry-level track day tires. They make full-on street rubber that runs colder at lower temperatures. They make slicks that need more heat to function properly, and they make rings. So when you get down to the nitty-gritty of a personal experience like the one you had, you were describing a situation called ledging, where the tire was ledging or shelving, a lot of people call it.
Yep.
And I had a different compound and a different brand that would prevent that specific ledging problem.
Yep.
So that worked for you. But that doesn't necessarily mean that if somebody has a different bike with a different setup, a different amount of spring rate, a different shock, a different amount of riding experience. A lot of motocrossers come to road racing and they know how to ride really, really well, but they're not used to smooth throttle transition.
Right.
They're used to that motocross light switch, So that changes the way the tires work a little bit. So we recommend one brand over the other for them because, I will say this. If you're looking for me to pick a brand or throw another brand under the bus or whatever.
So that's not necessarily the question, because I know you won't do that because, you sell all brands, and I know that, like, we've talked at length before about all of them have positives. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
what I will say about it is this: if it is one of the brands has the widest compound range.
Right.
I mean, it's wide.
Yep.
And no matter the rider or the skill level, I can make small, finite changes with that brand. The problem with that brand, if it were to have a negative, is it likes to be really hot. It doesn't do very well in colder temperatures. They're working on that, and they're getting better at that.
And
like
I talked to you about it before too. Like, there's great that there's that spread, but I feel like that's because there's so many compounds for that particular brand or whatever, and those things,
Right.
it's harder to
It's
narrow
harder
down what's
for a
going to
club
be.
racer to stock enough product to be able to make use of those choices.
Well,
Right.
yeah, I mean that, and like for the guy that's does 6 track days a year, and it's he's an advanced rider, so he's quick, but he's not a racer or whatever, and
Right.
he's not super in depth with all the little idiosyncrasies. Buying the wrong compound, or even if you recommend the right compound and just his style, whatever, he doesn't know enough about it, and because there's such a broad range, there's a chance to kind of not get the use out of the tire he could, versus with some of the other brands will only have like 3 compounds and they kind of serve a little bit wider array than having to narrow down so tight within X amount of compounds. You know what I mean?
The situation is wonderful when I have a pro rider and a slight weather change,
Right.
and we want to make a slight change for that pro rider. It works perfect for that. When it's a challenge is somebody on a budget can't afford to have 3 different flavors of rear and 2 different flavors of front just because the weather changed.
Right.
There's another brand that is kind of the do-it-all tire. You can't tear it, you can't mess it up. It's always going to work. But because it's so versatile and durable, it's not necessarily going to be the first pick for some of the fastest sprint racers.
Right. Different application.
Yeah, it's a different application. There's another brand that is very well known for being easy to set up suspension wise because it's extremely flexible, and it'll mask a lot of errors in your setup. I'll give you a story real quick about that brand. I had a guy with a bent wheel, didn't know his wheel was bent because the tire was taking up the oscillation.
That's crazy.
I put him on one of the modern low pressure designs from one of that brand's competitors, a different brand. And instantly he came back and he said, "You didn't balance my wheel." And I said, "I did balance your wheel, my friend." I said, "It's got a slight bend in it." I said, "You feel the bend now. You didn't feel it before because the other brand's more mushy."
Right.
So, I have literally band-aided and doctored over situations like that to get a guy through the weekend.
That's crazy. Yeah.
We won't do anything unsafe,
Right.
but we won't put a Band-Aid over an unsafe thing, but we'll put a Band-Aid over a setup situation. If it's a setup problem, we'll help a racer finish his race.
So without, I guess won't talk brand names or anything, but like, is there an advantage from like the stiffer carcass tires compared to the more soft carcass tire? Is one? Because I read something about this and I kind of want to get your opinion on it. Like, forget which one was what, but they were talking about, one has a little bit better straight up and down braking stability versus, the more trailing into the corner on the brakes or mid-corner stuff. Which way should someone lean if their riding style is more hard braking upright, or maybe they're more fast-flowing, mid-corner speed? Like, which one gives the more, I guess, the better advantage in those two things, a stiffer or the softer carcass?
So let me classify that by bracketing lap times. Okay, we're a Nelson Ledges club, beautiful track, wonderful facility. I've enjoyed that place since 1993. Was my first experience, and the owners there is really doing a good job. The track managers are really doing a good job, and Fasttrax management. And I cannot be honored or privileged enough to just plug Fasttrax and Nelson Ledges. I really appreciate everything they're doing. But we're talking about that track specifically, right? Because that's the club that's going to watch these videos. So if we were to bracket lap times, I'm going to tell you that most of your newer riders are going to be in the 1 minute, 15-second range and slower. Okay.
Yep. That's about right.
If they're there, none of the things you just described will matter.
Right. I guess I'm going a little outside of the newer rider stuff and more like the advanced guys or the guys that are maybe coming in and doing the, the Weir weekend or something.
Right, sure. So I just wanted to throw that out there because if you're a new rider, welcome to the forum, welcome to this interview, welcome to Nelson Ledges.
Right.
I don't want them to feel like they have to worry about what tire they're on. They don't even have a riding style yet until they're
Right.
doing,
Right.
112s at least, right?
Yep.
On a big bike or 15s on an ultralight. If you're doing 15s on a little bike, you're flying.
Oh yeah, that's real flying.
So if they're doing 15s on an ultralight or 12s, 11s on a big bike, they're getting to the place where they're going to start to feel the difference between a mushy tire and a firm tire or a V-shaped tire. The industry hates when I use that term. All the tire companies hate when I say V.
I love that tire.
Yeah, I know. I love
that
it too. But one brand makes most of their slicks in that. Another brand has an option that you can request that. Two of the brands don't even offer it. So different brands, different things, different people. All four brands have done sub 6 lap times at Nelson Ledges that I'm aware of, that I know about directly.
Yeah.
All four brands. The lap record is a high 4, almost a 5. Just call it a
Mesa.
5 flat. So if all four brands have done 6s and these new riders are coming in doing a 118, 122 lap time, you see why I say it doesn't matter
No, it doesn't.
what they run. The type of tire is very important, but the brand they select, honestly, is not a big deal. Now, you start getting into the 9s, getting into the 8s, getting into the 7s, man, now it's really going to start to matter whether they want a V-shaped tire or a round tire or a firm tire or a mushy tire, especially with a front. All those things are going to start to matter.
So why? So from your experience or technical aspect, why would someone
pick one over the other?
Either a mushy or a stiff tire.
Okay. The mushy tire is going to mask a suspension problem a little bit, and it can take the edge off of a bad setup. A firm tire will chatter less. Let's talk about front tire chatter. Front tire chatter is when it folds into the corner and it grips a massive amount and it pops back, and it grips and pops back. It kind of does this at a microscopic level as it's rolling, and it feels like and we call it chatter. Okay. The way to solve that typically is throw a little more air in it, make it a harder carcass because it has more air pressure in it,
Right.
and that will reduce the chatter. So a firm carcass is better to brake on. It's better to hit the brakes with, like going into turn 1 and turn 12, because it doesn't deform as much and it will hold the bike up and it will be stable when you roll it in off the brakes.
Okay.
A real mushy tire can, if the compound's right and the weather's right, can give an ultimately higher amount of grip, but it creates a feeling of instability when you roll in off the brake. A lot of newer riders are afraid to
springing
really
back a little bit.
Yeah. I tell the real new guys to run softer compounds with a lot of air just so it doesn't freak them out.
Yeah.
We'll put a pin in the compounds for newer riders. We'll put a pin in that. But to answer your question directly, one of the brands offers a choice between a firm round, a soft round, and a V.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a soft V carcass. It cannot hold its shape if it's not firm enough. A V-shaped tire has to be rigid to work.
Got ya.
A round tire can be softer carcass like this.
And the V
But
shape.
to be V, if it's soft, it goes like that.
And the V shape, the advantage in the V shape is for more side contact, right?
Correct. So talking Nelson Ledges, when you go through 1 and 2 and 3 and you make it one big right-hand turn and you're on, and 4 is not a small turn. I mean, we think of 4 as a short turn because it's kind of left and you go through, but if you look at it, it's long.
Oh, it's real long, yeah.
And the carousel is one of the longest turns on the East Coast. I can't think of anywhere else on the East Coast I've ever raced. I'm not counting the bowl at Daytona because that's
what
a bowl,
CMP. Don't they have like that real long?
CMP has one, but I don't think it's as long as the carousel
Really?
at Nelson. I really don't. It's long, but it's not that long. That carousel at Nelson is markedly long, and you're leaned over all the way the whole time,
Right.
and that's where a V-shaped tire really comes into play. Um,
Does the V shape give any advantage to transition, or no? Is a round tire
it,
better for the
it's a
transition?
weakness in transition. The
Okay,
V shape is better when you're all the way leaned over, but the round tire is easier to trail brake and manage when you lean in and out.
got ya.
So when you go into 12 and throw it back to 13, which at Nelson is your only real
Yeah,
transition,
yeah,
really. It's not like Grattan or New Jersey or other tracks where transitions are prominent
right.
and promiscuous and voluminous in the way that the designers use them. At Nelson, it's Roebling Road esque. It's Road America esque in that it's very fast and flowing and sweeping, and that's where the V-shaped tire shines. The
Gotcha.
round design is better when you're flopping left to right and you're working the brake and then you're off and then you're working it again. You know, you have more contact patch at say 40-degree lean angle or 30-degree lean angle with a round tire, but you have way more contact patch at full lean 44, 46 degrees um, with the V.
Okay. I don't want to make this like too long, but I do have a couple more questions. One of the ones I know is brought up a lot, and I'm sure you probably get asked this a lot. You know, is there slicks that you can't flip, or there's slicks that you can flip, especially at
Oh,
Nelson
glad you
Ledges?
asked that.
You know, at Nelson
Yeah.
Ledges, it's, I mean, you wear out the right side of the tire in a day. Um,
Yep.
and, you know, there's people, they want the tire flipped or whatever. And, you know, and there's talks of, well, you know, I've heard one brand you can, other you can't. What's the word on that, or the reasoning behind to or not to?
Okay, so in this instance, I have to name brands. I can't avoid it, so I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it for the safety of the community at large, for personal safety's sake. So if we go in alphabetical order, Bridgestone is first. Okay, Bridgestones are directional front and rear. Period. They are very advanced and very sophisticated in the way they wind the tire, the way they curl the weave. When you get on the throttle, it makes a bigger contact patch on the rear. And
Because
when
of
you
that
roll
weave.
out of the weave of the carcass that the
Yeah,
rubber's molded
because of
to,
that, and the throttle, you know, applying throttle because of the way it's made, it makes it spread. And if it was the other
imagine a
way,
Chinese toy and a Chinese finger toy. The tighter you pull it, the harder it pulls.
yep,
And then you push it, and it loosens up, and you can work your finger out of the toy. It's just like that. Those windings on a Bridgestone rear will make a bigger patch on the throttle. And then when you roll out, the patch gets smaller and it helps you turn in. A lot of riders that try Bridgestone slicks for the first time comment on how loose the tire feels on turn in, and it wigs them out because they're not used to that. But once they learn to embrace that, it increases or improves lap time because it helps the bike loose in and tight out. And that's what you want. You want to loose in and tight out, right?
interesting.
It's just like a wedge effect on a dirt track car where it puts a lot more weight on the left rear wheel so it doesn't spin the car out when you hit the gas. It's a similar effect with the motorcycle, except it doesn't know the difference between left and right. It understands the difference between forward and reverse. So when you roll out of the throttle and the wheel is pushing against the tread of the tire, it makes a smaller patch. And then when you get on the gas and the wheel is going that way, it makes a bigger patch.
Gotcha.
So that's Bridgestone. The rear
Now,
of
wait, before you go on, now if you did flip that, that would have a negative effect because of that. Would it be it's
it'll do two things if you do it. Well, three things. First, it'll really make me mad. My employees, I choke them out for that. I don't. I had a guy do it 10 years ago, and nobody's tried it in the last decade. We don't do that at Mize Mobile. Because number two, it's unsafe. The way the tire's wound, it can actually. I don't want to use the word delaminate because that's not a true, accurate scientific engineering term for what happens inside of the tire. But it could be bad. It could be unsafe to do.
yeah, because it's not
Where
working as it's designed, correct? I mean, that's just basically
yeah.
it.
Well, the performance thing goes away where you get a bigger patch in this direction, a smaller one in the other direction. But if somebody's doing 115s at Nelson Ledges, and you hear novices say this all the time, well, my buddy flipped his rear Bridgestone and he didn't know any difference.
Yeah. at that
That's because
depends on the
he's
level.
slow enough that it didn't matter.
Yeah,
right?
that depends on the level. So you may not feel it at a lower pace, but once you actually ride at a pace that's warranted to feel those differences, then that's when it's really gonna. Not
But
that
even
it's
over and above that, there is a safety.
right,
There's a safety issue with the way it's constructed.
right.
Okay. The Michelin single arrow rears are the same way. They're very sophisticated. They do the same thing. If Michelin gives us a rear slick with no arrows, we'll flip it. But if it has one arrow on it, we will only run it in the proper direction. The Dunlop modern slicks and the DOTs guys, we're only talking about slicks here, but the modern Dunlop slicks are almost all reversible, and they tell you that because they give you two arrows.
Okay.
They show you on the tire you can go both ways.
Got ya.
And I appreciate that Dunlop does that. It takes all the guesswork out. It's very clear, and I'm thankful that they do that. Now Pirelli designs their rear SC02 1 and 2 and 3 slicks in a 0-degree belt. Okay. They put one arrow on the side of the tire. I went as far up the Pirelli tree and I interviewed those guys. I talked to the top American I could get a hold of because I couldn't talk to anybody in Germany. The highest American I could get a hold of, this is what he said. He said, we put one arrow on the tire because when you wear one side out, it is now by default 50% less effective than it should be, and we think you should get a new tire. However, because it's a 0-degree belt, it's not unsafe to run it backwards.
Got ya.
And I got that in writing from them, and I am willing to flip a rear Pirelli slick. So we do flip the rear Pirelli slicks within reason. I mean, if I see cords, I'm not. But if I see some on both sides and it's better on the right, then we'll put it better on the right. We'll do that. Only because I got that in writing from the manufacturer. But and Michelin's will do based on which Michelin it is. Dunlop's will do if it has the two arrows. Bridgestone's, we do not. That tire is extremely sophisticated and advanced, and it's made to go one way for peak performance and safety. The two things we will never, ever, ever flip for anybody ever, anywhere is any front tire. We will not flip a front tire. We will not flip any DOT tire. Okay. Oh, well, you won't flip it because the tread is going a certain way and the water is going to come out of it a certain way, but it's dry outside. So since it's dry outside, we want you to flip it for us. No, if there's a DOT number on the side of a tire, we can only mount it the way the arrow goes, and it will only go one way. There's no such thing as a bidirectional DOT, with the rare exception of a couple of vintage tires on some old 18-inch wheels.
Yeah.
There's some vintage reversibles, but anything modern on a modern sport bike, if it's DOT, we ain't flipping it.
What's the other one I was going to ask you? Another question that's I've heard asked to you before, and might as well ask it to you right now. So, what's the shelf life on a set of slicks? So,
Okay.
what is a rule and DOTs for a rule of thumb? If there's tires on the bike or they're brand new. Let's say they're brand new. What is the tire life for a DOT and slick?
Okay, so any of the four major brands that we sell will tell us that the shelf life on any brand new tire that we have, new, that's very important, new, is about 5 years. They want it to get on track and get used up or go out on the road and get used up within about a 5-year period.
Okay.
It won't come apart or disintegrate at the 7-year or 8-year mark. It'll just have less traction. Okay. So there's two basic types of traction on a tire. You have mechanical grip and adhesive grip. One of them goes away with age. The other one goes away with wear. And that's why you have the tread dots. When the tread dot goes all the way down, you're losing mechanical grip. When a tire ages out or heat cycles out, you could have plenty of traction, plenty of tread, but it's still going away from adhesive grip. So there's two ways to lose traction: mechanical and adhesive. And if a tire gets extremely old, you're losing adhesive grip. Now, that being said, one of the brands ages better than the other ones because of the manufacturing process. Okay. 3 of the brands are ready to go at peak performance the minute you put them on the track hot. Because of that, they're not as durable. Um, the durable brand is not as good, in my opinion. Okay, sorry guys, don't get mad, but it's not as good in the first few laps of its life as the other 3 fully cured brands are. Okay, but it will last longer. So if you're a track day guy and you want durability per dollar, okay, and you're not trying to break a track record, but you want a good quality set of DOT race slicks or, DOT race tires or slicks to go, say, 3 whole days of track day use, your best bet is to go with the brand that is a little hard in the beginning of its life and it kind of softens up as you go, but you'll get more lasting durability over time. If you are a Fasttrax rider that's training to go win a wear race and you're doing 107s and 106s at Nelson Ledges and you've got a lap time like that, then I highly recommend the fully cured products because you can put them on, get them hot, and go, and they'll go super fast right out of the gate, and
Yeah,
they'll do
those
better.
people usually aren't worried about durability for the most
Yeah,
part.
correct.
So
Yeah, yeah. If you're doing 107s at Nelson's, durability is not your concern.
yeah.
Right.
Let's see what else. Man, what there was one more question I was gonna have. You kind of
While you think about that, let me make a suggestion about a protocol for what a new rider is supposed to do with their tires.
great. That would be fantastic.
So a guy shows up at Fasttrax for the first time. First of all, welcome and thank you for coming to the greatest sport in the world. I've dedicated my life to the people that love this, and I love you for being here. Thank you for coming. So the first thing you need to do is get the right amount of air in your tires, and you need to also adjust your brain to the understanding that you need to check your tire pressures every single time you race your motorcycle. Okay? You don't check it once in the morning and forget it the rest of the day. Okay? That's okay on the public road, where if you vary 3 or 4 pounds, it's not a big deal. Okay? All street tires are grossly overinflated. They're overinflated to protect the rim for your safety. They're not set to the proper inflation level for maximum grip. When you come out to the racetrack, even on street tires, we change the pressures up so that you get more grip. Okay? And they'll get more volatile and they'll change from 9 o'clock in the morning to 12 o'clock. Plus, you're going faster because you're new. So every time a new guy goes out, he gets a little faster than he was the session before. So there's more load on the tire and more temperature on the tarmac because the sun's been beating on it longer. So every time you ride your motorcycle, you need to check your pressures. Every time, every time, every time, every time, every time. You might find late in the day, if you go out for a late 4:30 or 5 o'clock session, you might need to add a couple pounds of air to your tire because it actually dropped air inside your tire, especially the rear, as big as it is. So my instruction to a new rider is know what pressures and check them every single time you ride, and go meet your tire guy. If it's me, if it's one of my employees, if it's a dealer, if you're at a different track, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, talk to your tire guy. Number one, he cares about you. If he doesn't care about you, he won't become the tire guy. I know that because I pick who the tire guys get to be. Okay.
Yeah.
If he doesn't care about you, he's not doing that job. He does care about you. And number two, he knows the products. Even if he's not an expert at every little compound or brand like I am, he'll at least have a chart that he was given that he can go by, that he can go reference, that will give him a starting point to start putting, the right amount of pressure in your tires. And he can tell you whether to heat them up or not, if it's a street tire or not. So go see your tire guy. You don't have to buy anything from him. Just go say hello, show him what you're using, and ask him for his recommendation. And it doesn't cost anything to do that. It's free. And using that information that he gives you, you can have a safe, fun track day.
Right on. I think I did talk to you about this. I asked you this question before when we were at Pitt and it rained, and had this discussion with other people. We were wondering, and you've answered the question for me already once, but like people will say, oh, I don't know how World Superbike riders are making at the pace they're going, making a SC0, SC1, whatever, last that duration, 24 laps at that level, and what's the reason by that? Because our tires aren't exactly the same, correct? Is that what it is? We had kind of talked a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'm absolutely willing to talk about that. So, in that brand specifically, there's a lot of misinformation about what the numbers mean. Their labels go red, X, 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay. A lot of track day folks have, and racers too, have misunderstood that the higher the number, the more durable the tire. Okay. That's actually not correct.
Okay.
What Pirelli will tell you is that a 0 is for super hot days, a 1 is for 85 degrees, a 2 is for sub 70s, and a 3 is for really cold days. Or the new 3 that's come out in the last couple years isn't even a race tire. It's built on a track day carcass. It's not even the same carcass as a 0, 1, and 2. So a 3 is kind of a whole different product. It doesn't cost the same amount of money. It's not made the same. It doesn't run the same. We use similar pressures, but we alter them a little bit based on who the rider is and what the bike is between a 2 and a 3 and a 0. So in general, the hotter it gets, the lower the number. The colder it gets, the higher the number, is what they want you to do. That's what they tell you to do with their product. Now, what the riders have figured out is a higher number will sometimes last longer in the same temperature grade. But what that means is you're trading durability for grip, right?
Yeah.
As grip goes up, durability comes down. As durability goes up, grip comes down. Okay. The only way to get more durability and more grip is to build a tire that can take more heat without breaking down. And without getting too political or picking one brand over another, that's what some of the modern low pressure designs are trying to do. They haven't succeeded in every compound on every bike in every situation, but that's what a 19-pound rear slick is trying to do versus a 25-pound rear slick is trying to do.
Two things to come off of that, like we talked about before about the difference in the tires that what we peasants get versus World Superbike. You were talking about the operating temperature range. It's much higher operating temperature range, and like for that specific World Superbike tire versus what the general public can get. Correct?
Well, to be blunt, if you don't mind me being a little bit rude when I say this, I don't intend to be insensitive, but it's just a factual. The reason 0s and 1s tear up a lot at the club level, even in certain temperature ranges, is the rider's not fast enough to keep it hot.
Right.
Okay. When you have a guy at Nelson Ledges doing 6s and 7s on a warm August day, his 0s will come off baby smooth. You get a little slower rider, somebody doing 10s and 11s, and the weather's slightly cooler. That exact same tire can come off looking like it went through a cheese grater.
Got you.
And that's not knocking that product label at all. And anyway, that's just what compounds are designed to do. The reason we have all these compounds is so we can use them differently.
Right.
One of the brands goes from ultra soft to medium, which I take issue with because if you go to McDonald's, you can't buy a small soda. If you go to McDonald's, you buy medium, a large, a king long, John Dong large, whatever. So there's no such thing as a small soda because nobody will buy it. Well, in this brand that I sell a lot of their tires, I love those guys. They're great people, but I don't like the fact that they choose to not call a hard tire a hard. They call it a medium by name because nobody will buy a hard tire.
Yeah.
So the hardest thing is a medium. So then you have soft and ultra soft. There's another brand that does call them hard, that will call it that by name. The French brand will do that. They're a little more honest about the nomenclature. And then there's another brand that goes by numbers, and they got a wide range of numbers. And we kind of, and we see the same thing in that brand too. If you get Mark Heckles on a real hot day, he can run lower numbers, which means softer, and he won't mess them up. You do the same thing with a novice on a cold day, and they'll shred them. And you say, well, how can a novice destroy a tire that a professional racer doesn't? It has to do with heat. It has to do with keeping it in the right heat range.
Yeah.
Generally, I want to go back to that thing I put a pin in before about putting novices on softer tires. Generally, if I'm not going to have a problem with cold tearing, because that's another issue, I like to put newer riders on softer compounds because they can sheen the rubber off in a slow, controlled way and get the most use out of the tire. If you have too hard of a tire and you don't shave that top layer of rubber off, I call it sheening because that's the term Walt Schaefer taught me 20 years ago, but you want to kind of slowly wear that rubber off. If it stays on there and the tire never wears, that outer layer will crust and get hard. And that newer rider will lose the benefit of that tire and they'll never get to the good rubber. Super fast riders don't have that problem because they just shred it down.
Right.
So for super fast riders, they actually want harder compounds, not softer. A lot of new track day guys think that, pros are on real soft gumball slicks. Not so much. They tear them up. They sometimes need a firmer compound to survive, especially in an abrasive track like Mid-Ohio or New Jersey. A not abrasive track like Summit Point, you get a little, it varies, but if you're a newer rider trying slicks for the first time, I recommend you lean a little bit soft on the compounds, and it'll probably serve you better unless it's really stinking cold and you can't keep them hot.
Yeah.
Then we have to have a different conversation.
Yeah.
But in the summertime, that's what we would recommend.
My last one before I get into just kind of we'll get into how people get a hold of you outside of at the track and et cetera. But typically, and I know there's like an exception in one brand, but if it's a cold day, bearing, let's say, compounds outside of it, I know that probably plays a part in it. But generally, if you have something that's within the range, if it's hot out, are you adding pressure? And let's say front and rear, are you adding pressure or removing pressure to adjust for temperature swings?
Okay, so let's break that answer down into 3 questions. On any front, some of these are more susceptible to this and some are less susceptible to this, but it's at least mildly true on any front that when it gets really hot outside, you're going to grow a little bit more air, but you're also going to make the carcass a little more flexible. So they'll go ahead and add a little bit of air if it's really hot, like 90 degrees outside with a fast rider. They'll add a couple pounds
to make it a little bit more stable.
Make it more stable because you can introduce chatter. If the compound's working really good and the heat goes up and everything's as it should be, chatter can start to become a problem. So they'll add a couple pounds.
Now, is this across the board with all brands and like?
Yeah, all fronts.
Okay.
That's a front tire thing across the board.
Okay.
So if we tell you, your pressure in the front is 34, then when it's super hot, you might try 35. If we tell you to start at 36, you might go to 37. Minor variations in different products from brands, but just basically add a pound. Now, when it's really cold, you can do the opposite. We're still on front tires now. You can do the opposite because not only do you not have as much grip and the tire's not grabbing as hard, so you want it to flex a little more to keep some heat in it, you take a pound out for that, but you also take a pound out because the rubber itself is colder.
To
It's
create
not
more
going to be as
friction.
flexible,
Yeah.
and it's going to be stiffer. So you want it to flex some. So if it's really cold, you want to take a pound out of the front.
Okay.
Yep. Now let's move on to rears. And the reason I said let's do 3 versions of this is because in the back, it depends whether we're talking about a low pressure modern design or we're talking about something a little more traditional, like a 25, 26 pound rear tire. Okay. With the 25, 26 pound variations, regardless of brand who made them, there's a couple brands running those now. But with those variations, when it gets really, really hot, you actually add air to protect the tire. Okay, if you're really fast. Now, if you're doing 15s at Nelson Ledges, it's not going to matter. You're only out there 20 minutes and you can't overheat it. No offense, it's not going to hurt it. But if you're doing 7s and it's super crazy hot, you'll see those guys go up a little bit in the back just so they don't overheat them.
So what technically, like, what's the technicality behind that? What's the reasoning behind doing that?
So the reason for that is the tire will flex more. It'll get more wiggly as it heats up. And then that act of wiggly creates friction inside the fibers. When you have that wiggling, the actual fibers inside of the tire will rub each other and make more heat.
Okay.
So to prevent the process of making more heat, we add air. So we take some of the wiggly out and we just firm it up a little bit. And we're talking small changes here. We're not talking about 5 pounds.
It's helped creating less pressurized on track.
Yeah, you're going to have
by adding pressure. You won't grow the tires much pressure wise on track.
Right. It can reduce pressure gain, pressure increase.
Unwanted pressure increase.
Yeah. So when it's really cold, we go the other way. We let a little bit of air out because now we want it to flex because that helps keep it warm. And especially with a newer rider, if you're a newer rider and it's really cold, you might want to run 24 instead of 25 in the back of those brands because it can help them flex and keep heat in them. Okay. Now, if you're talking about the modern low pressure stuff, okay, and without naming brand names, you guys know who you are if your tire guy told you to run 19 or 20 pounds. When it comes to those, if you put too much air in those tires, it'll stay too convexed and it'll wear on one little strip and it'll shred it. So you take air out to spread the load. Now, that does increase heat. The reason these are modern low-pressure design tires is because they can take all the heat you throw at them. Okay? The fastest pro you ever heard of cannot overheat those tires in 8 laps.
Okay.
They can't. I know that because I mounted Gagne's tires at Pitt 2 years ago when he won the Superbike race. I put those tires on his rim, and he was on the same exact standard compound stuff that I sell the wear racers, okay? And I know what compound they were and what pressures was in them. And if he didn't damage those tires, there's nobody else on this planet that's going to do it.
Gotcha.
So what we do is we lower the pressure to spread the load over a bigger patch. It does create more heat. It does. And that's why people are afraid of doing it. But you can't hurt those tires. They're made to take all the heat you can throw at them and more. Both of those brands that are doing that with their new designs, you can't overheat them. The reason we would start high on a cold day, this gets confusing. I just told you with the other brands, we lower the air pressure when it's cold. With this type of a product, you start a little higher because we don't ever want to run below 19 pounds as a low safety floor, okay? The tire companies themselves will actually tell you 24, 25 pounds.
Right,
okay?
yeah.
We call that lawyer pressure. They don't want any chance of a tire failure, so they're going to always add air to whatever we tell you to do. So they'll never tell you to run 20 pounds on a tire. They'll always tell you 24, 25, 26. Look at their websites. That's what they'll tell you.
Yeah, I saw that. That's why when, was using switch over to the one tire, then you were telling me, and I'm like, hey, really?
I'm in violation of their speeches and their lectures
But
when
it
I
works
tell you.
perfect, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, with in certain weather conditions, certain asphalt, if you put more than 20 pounds in those low pressure rears, you're just giving up grip and you're giving up durability.
Right.
Yeah, the tire will get hotter, but it'll take it. It's made to take it. And when it's cold out, we add a little bit of air because we don't want. Okay, so you come off the warmers at say 170, 190 degrees, and then you hit the track. And even if you're a fast guy, if it's cold enough, you're going to start to lose temperature.
Especially Nelson, where we're not using much front brake or using much pressure on the front end. You're going to drop
Yeah,
2 pounds, basically.
you're going to drop 2 pounds. So now on the front, we don't add air on a cold day, but on the rear we do.
Yeah.
Because if you lose pressure in the rear, we don't want you to start at 19 and wind up at 17. That's bad. So you start at 21 and you wind up at 19. Okay.
Yep.
If it's super hot out, you go all the way to 19, and then when you go out and ride, if you're doing anything sub 112-minute lap times, 110s, 19s, a lot of guys are in that bracket in the Wera clubs. Those guys are all gaining a pound or two in the back, and they go out at 19 and come in at 21.
Gotcha. Well, awesome, man. I appreciate all the info, and maybe we'll have to do it again. I'm gonna get want to think of some more questions. I think we covered quite a bit, especially with beginners and stuff. And if there's anything you could think of you want to add before I kind of pitch your website, you can kind of give some information. What organizations besides us who you service, and what rounds and stuff that you're at. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we get into that?
Yeah, the tire companies break distribution up by geography. They do it geographically just because it costs a lot of money to travel to a race.
Right.
Sometimes we can spend $1,200 to $1,500 in expenses just to get there before we sell the first tire. And if we don't sell 20, 30 tires, we're losing money. So they try to break things up geographically for the newer, smaller dealers. Now with Mize Mobile, we've been cursed by our success. We've been in the business 20 years. We're the biggest outfit on the East Coast that do what we do. We're the only one that's multiple brand. We're like the Tire Rack of sport bike racing. We're not connected to Tire Rack. I say that, and we're all respect to them. I know their title's copyrighted. No plagiarism there, but we kind of serve that role in this community. And the tire companies are a little quicker to send us out farther and let us lose a little money because of just how big we are. So we'll service everything for one brand. We service everything from Miami to Canada. It's all ours now. I got to do the whole East Coast. For the other three brands, for a second brand now, that's going to be true for any and all clubs that brand can be sold in. In other words, a competitor didn't already sponsor it. So for two brands now, we're going to go from Miami to Canada.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's exciting. We're excited about that. And then the other two brands, they are broken down into smaller sub areas with more sub dealers. So we have agreements in certain locations to do those brands, but we can't take them all the way to Florida, for example.
Gotcha.
That would be a no-no for us. So the main thing for your guys to know coming to Fasttrax, if they're watching this on a Fasttrax forum, is we talked about all this stuff about the tires for a while. It's interesting. It's fun. But don't get hung up on picking one tire over another.
Right.
The most important thing for you to do is be on something that is safe for what you intend to do with it, and make sure it's the correct tire of whatever brand. Make sure it's the proper tire within that brand to serve your needs. I don't care who made it. What I want to know is that it's going to do the job that you need it to do.
Yeah, and that's why, it doesn't matter if you're coming in brand new or whatever. Get with Quentin. He'll give you the information, or one of his guys. If he's not there, he'll give you the information you need to make the right choice, point you in the right direction, and get you sorted out.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add, man?
Have fun and be safe, but you have to do it in this order. It has to be safe first. Then you can have fun.
Agreed.
I'm not saying that as a tire guy. I'm saying that as a guy that's been racing motorcycles for 30 years. Okay. If it's not safe, trust me, it gets unfun real quick.
Yeah,
So
that's for sure.
let's do the safe.
Gets real
and let's have
expensive
fun.
too.
Yeah, well, I can't. I mean, hey, all the tires they need are just a credit card away. So.
So where can people find you at? Get a hold of you as far as like I'm gonna pop up the website here. We already got the Mize Mobile and your number up there on the screen. How can they get a hold of you? You know, you run with Fasttrax. Who else do you organizations do you work with?
We do the whole N2 outfit nationally. We do select STT. We do everywhere north of Summit Point. We do, I think, all of ARMA for next year. I think at least all of ARMA north of VIR, at least.
I'm popping your website. If anybody can see here, you can see got the Mize Mobile website. You can go on there. It has the storefront, the booking information, his number, and ways to get a hold of him there. So you can go to mizemobile.com if anybody wants to check that out and go on his site. You can see what he offers, tires and stuff and whatnot. Order from there if need be.
Mizemobile.com. My name is Mise, but we spelled the company with a Z for enunciation. So it's mizemobile.com. I'll answer the phone. I get people from California don't know I'm on the East Coast. They'll ring me at 11 o'clock at night hoping I'm still awake, and it's really 2 a.m. So happens all the time. I lost 2 marriages over this business. So, I mean, trust me, I'll answer the phone. If you need help, you call. When I was racing, my program never stopped. I know that when you're racing, your program never stops. So if you need help, call me, and I might even answer it in the shower. I've been known to do it.
Good thing it's not video chat. Is there anything else before we call it a session here? We did like an hour and 15 minutes. I mean, we could probably talk for another hour more, but I figure let's cut it right there. Is there anything else important you got?
No, I want to thank you for having me, Ryan. I want to thank you for all that you do for Fasttrax and the sport.
I appreciate it.
You're a good spokesman for the club, and I was there in the 90s when Bob started it years ago, and to see what it's grown into today and the job that Malakar and Fred and Brian and Patrick and you and the rest of the crew, Marty over there with the coaches and Eric and everybody, I'm just so proud of the fact that it's a family club. It's a family atmosphere. Anybody will help you, and everybody loves you. Just come and listen to your coaches because they care about you. Listen to your tire guy because he does too. And if you follow the basic instructions that you're given, you can have a really safe, fun weekend at the track.
Yeah, we appreciate having you there, having a supplier, somebody that's bringing all the goods we need. And I mean, I just something I talked to you the other day about. I wanted to do it because to get everybody kind of exposed enough to you and to the coaches and everybody and the people that kind of surround Fasttrax and make everything work. And it's great information that that is just now will be accessible. You'll be able to just go on, watch a video. There's a lot of information we covered today. But if there's anything that hasn't been covered, you can always call him or approach him at the track or whatever it is, and he'll get you set up. And he's really good, man. Bounce pretty much anything off of him. He'll take care of you. He's always taking care of me. All of our customers and stuff. We've had, nothing but good things up there. So we appreciate having you. And man, it's been a good chat. And thanks for doing this. I appreciate it. And call it right there if you're good with that, man. Sound good?
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
All right, man. I appreciate it. And we'll call this an episode. Thanks.